I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the UP Fair, man. Hi, this is Jim Islip with MSU Extension, and this is What's Up at UPREC on April 14th, 2021. Part 1 of this two-part episode about on-farm water issues will deal with water quantity and types of water use at UPREC. Part 2 will deal with protecting surface water from contamination.
I'm Abbey Palmer, and I work at Michigan State University Upper Peninsula Research and Extension Center. We're a teaching and research farm located in Chatham in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And today we're going to look at how water moves through the farm. We use water every single day here on the farm. We use it to wash produce, we use it to irrigate our fields, to fill sprayers, to water the cattle, to wash our hands before we harvest and after we are out working. Each of these uses is part of our direct water footprint. I'm sitting here next to a cistern. A cistern is a water holding tank, and we pump water from our well into our cistern in order to irrigate our fields. This brings up the question, what part of the water usage here on the farm is direct, and what part of water usage here on the farm is virtual? If you think about it, every time you turn on the faucet or flush the toilet, that's your direct water usage. We also have indirect water usage, and we're part of the whole water cycle. There's the things that we do here on the farm, specifically to water our crops or to water our livestock. And then there's the water that goes into producing the things that we use to make the farm run. That doesn't involve us actually turning on the faucet, but it still is part of our bigger overall water footprint. The question, how do we eat water, is one that we're going to explore and kind of look behind by interviewing some different people here on the farm today, such as our cattle manager, Paul Naasz, our apprentice farmers, Joe Newman from Mighty Soil, and some other folks and environmentalists who we've invited to the farm to talk about our water usage. So how do you use water in the greenhouse?
When we're seeding our transplants, we mix water with our soil mix, which comes super dry, so we pre-mix some water in, and then we water everything, depending on how sunny of a day it is, 2 to 3 times a day, and we have this nice watering wand.
So what other methods do you use to irrigate your crops, either here or in the field?
In the field we use drip tape and overhead irrigation sprinklers.
Can you describe what is drip tape?
Drip tape is just like a really thin plastic flexible tube that we run the length of our beds, and you can get it with different spacings of emitters, and the emitters are just where the water comes out. When you run water through the drip tape, it fills up and just very slowly releases drips of water at whatever spacing, and also avoiding the water hitting the ground and splashing dirt up onto the leaves. You know, that keeps the crops cleaner, so it's easier for us to wash them, and it also reduces disease.
How does drip tape compare to an overhead sprinkler?
Yeah, so drip tape is a lot more efficient. It gets the water exactly where you need it. It also takes longer to get whatever amount of water down that you need to get down. The advantage of drip tape is to reduce the water consumption and reduce how much water and dirt ends up on your plants. The disadvantage of drip tape is that most drip tape is single season use. So if you use drip tape, you know, all over a farm, you end up filling a dumpster at the end of the season with just plastic drip tape. So I really like overhead irrigation because the overhead irrigation really does a nice job of fully covering something. It's also good for things like cover crops. And then we also have a fertilizer injector in our setup that allows us to put foliar spray right into our irrigation setup. So if we want to spray the leaves of a plant with fish emulsion to get some trace minerals onto our plant leaf surfaces, then running that through the overhead irrigation does that. Running it through the drip just gets it at the root zone, which is also really good for applying liquid fertilizers and that kind of thing. And the overhead irrigation is just a lot easier to set up, and it lasts pretty much forever.
Paul, first off, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about who's behind you?
Yeah, so we're standing out in one of our pastures. It's mid-April, but we've got them out here now because there's no snow. But we are continuing to feed, waiting for the pasture season to come. And you can see that we have water set up behind us. So these are the beef cows with their calves. We do a fall calving, so these calves were born mainly in August and September of last fall. Animals have a requirement for water. The majority of that water comes from actually drinking the water, but it can also come from the food that the livestock eat. So in the wintertime, when we're feeding these cows, we feed a lot of what we call baleage, which is actually wet, so that the hay bale is like 50% moisture. So whenever they take a bite of feed, they're getting half of that feed that they're eating is water. And that can supplement their water intake for the day and their water needs for the day. So in the wintertime, if we're feeding baleage, which is wet at 50%, versus a dry hay, which is only going to be about 15% water, they require less water with baleage than they do with dry hay. Conversely, in the summertime, when they're eating green grass is about 80% water. So they get a lot more of their water from the feed than they do from consumption. The challenge we have, however, is in the summertime, it's 80 degrees and water requirements go up. So they require a lot more water. So although they may be getting more water from their feed, they actually drink more water physically in the summer than they do in the wintertime, just because in the wintertime it's cold and their water requirement isn't as great.
Okay, my next question has to do with how they get water.
There are several ways they can get water. They can get water through the feed, they can get water through surface water, and they can get water through well water. Here at our farm, we're pretty much all well water. We have a couple of our own wells, plus we also are hooked to the village water system that supplies most of our water. Don't really like to use surface water too much for several reasons, and surface water could be standing water in the field in a low spot, could be creeks, could be other forms that some farmers have created to provide or to catch water for livestock. The challenge sometimes with surface water is there can be a potential for disease transmission. It's not very high, but we try not to rely too much on surface water, so the majority of our water that the cows drink is well water.
What kinds of different strategies do you have for watering the cattle?
Our operation, we are what's called a grass finished operation. All of our cattle are not fed any grain, and so we rotate our cattle through the summertime to different pastures on a daily basis. So we have a lot of above ground water lines set up, and we actually have our tank, you can see, is on wheels, and we can pull our tank around and follow the cattle, or the cattle follow the water. That's how we move them. They like to follow the water tank. But other methods, you would have just a stationary tank or a hydrant that the cattle walk to. And we want to have that as close to the cattle as possible. I think the standard rule of thumb is not more than 900 feet away at any time from a watering source. They don't have so far to walk. So you have several different fountains, tanks set up. In the wintertime, we have what are called frost-free hydrants or frost-free drinking devices that are insulated. They've got a tube that goes into the ground to allow warm geothermal heat to come up from the bottom and keeps those tank units from freezing.
Thanks for joining us for a tour of the farm where we looked at how water is used in lots of different contexts. And one of the things that I learned from talking to people and learning about what we do here is that any water savings that we take on here at the farm to do things more efficiently, we also pass on to the people who eat the food, and so that water savings can be passed on down the line.
That's what's up at UPREC. Hope to see you again next time.
I'm in the Fayette, Fairport, Faithhorn, Iron Mountain, Flat Rock, Freda, Ishpeming, Tri Mountain.